we are your IT, but we're really just giving you the service side of it, and you don't have to worry about managing any part of it except for the application piece. And it's really just a different licensing model. It's not intended to be restrictive in any way. So I know there are cases where people want to access the database backend. We can still manage that with a SaaS product. But the idea is we would have a higher frequency of change, be able to manage automated testing, automated deployments, and those types of things without having to watch that quite as closely as if it was on-prem or in our hosted environments. I just wanted to kind of cover those three high level, and then back to you.
Okay. So welcome everyone. Just want to give you a quick background with each of the panelists. The idea would be that we will use some questions to spark the conversation here. And so while the panelists bring in a wealth of information from their different deployment methods that they chose, we would encourage highly that all of you take part in this discussion and ask questions and bring in your own viewpoints as the discussion progresses. Just a quick note for everybody. Doug with Montana DOT, they are using the on-premise deployment method. For Aaron with Kentucky Transportation Cabinet, they're using the hosted solution right now for the AgileAssets software. And David Wooldridge with Nevada DOT, they are not live yet, but they are using the SaaS model, the subscription model. So with that information in mind, I will jump into the questions.
Himanshu, before we get started, I failed to mention that y'all need to log in to slido.com. This is where we're going to capture the questions for the session, and that's for the online people and also here in the room. And go to IUC, log into IUC 2018, and go to room 105 and enter your questions there. So,
thanks.
It's perfectly okay to pose a question in the room here. That is optional if you want to go to slido.com and type in a question up front, also from remote. That's fine as well.
Sounds good. Thank you, gentlemen. With that, the very first question, and I'm going to start with you, Doug, here, is what was the most significant factor when you made the decision on a certain deployment method? So, the way we look at this, cost plays a really big role in making this decision, whether it is a direct dollar cost or it is an opportunity cost, or just simply as time and resources. So, David, what was the significant factor in your opinion?
Ironically, I think the most significant factor for Montana to choose the on-premise was because we always done it that way. We've had Agile since the mid-90s. It wasn't Agile, but we had the payment management system, and that was hosted. And then EVMS came on board, our fleet management came on board in 2004. That was on-premise as well. SIMS came 14, and that was on-premise, and then maintenance management we just followed suit. We do have a talented DBA who works for us, and she's made life incredibly easy for me, and incredibly easy for us for the implementation for MMS. But I think really the base decision is because that's the way we always done it, and we felt comfortable that way.
Okay, very good. Yeah, and I think it's a lot of the times what happens is that the legacy that has been going on plays, we just never felt the need to make any changes to it. And I'll go to you, David, with some of the things that you have been thinking about that exact thing, as to why would you not choose on-prem? And I know we were having some discussion over the cocktail yesterday on it.
Yeah. So I made the mistake. Joe Garvey was in our office a few months ago, and I got on one of my rants about things I go on rants about sometimes, and talked about why we did the software as a service option of it. And it really comes down to we have a lot of work to do in IT, and hosting your own servers, maintaining, managing, all that stuff is just, you're doing work for IT's sake, trying to keep the servers, they're good for 4 or 5 years, and you got to upgrade them. The operating system, you might get by 6, 8 years and you're upgrading it. And it's just a lot of work that doesn't really drive any business or value to the business that we're there to support. So if I can offload some of these things to somebody else and let them run that, it basically expands my ability to offer services to the Department of Transportation, and that's what we're there for. It's a little scary. I think 5 years ago I probably wouldn't have gone down this route, but if I were a vendor today, I wouldn't want my software deployed in 50 different environments and knowing how, they got their firewall rules set up and you got this and you got this, and no, they use Oracle, they use SQL, they use Postgres. I wouldn't want to worry about that. I want to deliver a good product, and if I can control that environment that it lives in, I can deliver a better product. And it's a little bit risky as a customer because, like in this case, we've never done business with AgileAssets, and but you just have to do a good job, do a good RFP, select a good vendor, have good project managers on both ends, and hopefully we get this thing done. I think we started this 8 months ago today, and like Jim said, we're not live yet, but we're getting there. So.
And this will probably tie up very well with you, Aaron. You have been working with AgileAssets for quite some time, and you recently made the switch over to a hosted solution. What was fueling that decision, or what made you move over to a hosted solution?
Well, in Kentucky, we have, the way we're set up is we have our OIT branch, which is our database guys that are in transportation, and then we have our COT group, which handles the servers and bills us and all that for those. And then you have your Active Directory team, which is another team, and then I had you guys. And so I had to coordinate everybody together on the same time, sit and wait till everything's deployed, and then I could go in and do my testing and those types of things. What we've noticed with the hosted environment is, I've eliminated all those people. Agile just handles that at this point. And another problem we were having is I don't feel like we ever created a one-to-one relationship for testing purposes. There would always be something that was working fine over here, you would deploy it, and something would break. It wasn't working on our side, so it just didn't. It wasn't like the same puzzle piece. It just didn't. Things wouldn't fit, and we would get weird errors and problems, and spend time cleaning that up. And as I mentioned, as far as cost goes, the way COT was billing us for the servers and the maintenance, and they would basically bill us all of their downtime, and they didn't know what to bill to. They would just bill it to transportation. So I don't know that what we did isn't more expensive. It may be all those advantages and cheaper.
Very good. That's pretty interesting background on your decision making, and all of the agencies will have their own challenges when you are making such decision. We have 3 in front of us right now. Let us know if you have this particular decision making challenge here that you are thinking through, and we can discuss it with these panelists. I will jump over to our next question there. Dave, do you want to cue in this?
From what I've heard from a few customers I've spoken to, a lot of the decisions that people have come to with regard to hosting options are based on this general sense that everybody has to show some kind of a cost savings with their environments. It's not, everybody hasn't said that, but there's this general sense the federal government's centralizing all these different data centers. The states are following suit. They're going through large aggregation and centralization of their hosting environments, and with that, we lose access to the systems that we've become familiar with, right? You mentioned actually before that you have this dependence on this DBA internally, which has really been instrumental and helpful because that DBA is focused on this one application, and the centralization could potentially risk that or take that away. And I've heard that has played into it. For each of the panelists here, I guess we can go through this. Did that play into why you picked this particular deployment method? Obviously, you are on-prem, so it wouldn't necessarily apply, but for the other two.
We are actually in a kind of a unique situation as far as being a government agency and not really having to show cost savings when we do this. My boss is John Wilcoxon, and he was basically me for a long time, and he sees the benefit over the cost. And I don't know exactly what COT was charging us. I don't know if we could even figure that out. But he knew, even though it was quite a bit of money, he saw the value in it, and so that's it, the cost itself. It weighs in, but it's outshined by the value.
And I honestly, I wasn't too worried about costs. I'm more interested in providing good service to our customers. And the state rears its ugly head once in a while and wants to do a consolidation effort, and the fewer things that we have, because they're about 20 years behind everybody else in the state of Nevada. So the fewer things that we're depending upon them for, the better, and they are very expensive. A server with the capacity of my iPhone costs me about $250 a month. So, they don't bring a lot of value, and that's really the goal for me is bring value to our customers. And so whatever method that is, I just kind of told my systems guys the other day. I said I don't plan on ever buying another server. So got to figure this out.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
One of the problems that we had in Kentucky when we were hosting it was if you had a problem, if you called the help desk and said, I've got a problem with OMS and tried to explain to them, a lot of times they would say, what is OMS? Since we've gone to you guys hosting it, it is a lot better. We have enjoyed it. We went through some trials. Aaron and I went through some of getting the timing down, the response time. But once that response time came down, I mean, we're happy with it. I wouldn't want it any other way right now.
Yeah, they went in and cleaned up some windows and really improved performance all around. So it's faster now than it was.
Okay.
And the next question actually really cues into this discussion. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, this is really for Doug to follow up on the previous question. Just what pressures, I guess, did you have or momentum was there to go on-prem? What are you dealing with at the state level that maybe others are struggling with also, and ideas that came up as you were deciding to maintain on-prem?
That's a good question. We have two major data centers that we just purchased or built in the state of Montana at great cost, and they were instantly obsolete once they were built. No surprise with how fast technology is moving. So certainly there was some pressure from our Department of Administration, which houses the state ISD division, to host on premises. They've since backed off a little bit on that for agencies, and if you can show significant, equal or better, we can go another route. But certainly there was some pressure for us to do it on-prem because of the investment and upfront costs that Montana made as a whole to the data centers.
All right. Hey, there's a few questions here. Right.
Go ahead.
The first one was from James, so the second
so
one,
the
would
first
you read
one
it aloud,
we
please?
already discussed. We have another question which says, is your current deployment method different from your original method? And I think that really fits for Aaron's situation here. Anything else that you would want to add to that second question there, Aaron?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it was different. We had the on-site before, and now we have the hosted. And for our situation, it's advantageous to be in a hosted environment. The one thing I was going to add to Joe's, as far as the pressures to stay on premises, we were as well. Our COT has never let a software out from underneath their grasp. So this was the first time anything had ever been hosted. They really made sure they were overly secure on it, and they really fine-tooth combed it as far as the hurdles and everything else we had to go through. And they wanted to make it basically their model to allow others to get out, but we had to be the guinea pigs, I guess.
So Aaron, that's very interesting. Have they come back with any negative feedback for you?
We have I haven't heard from COT at all. No,
That's awesome.
The
less you hear from them, the better.
Yeah, well, usually it's all you can do to hear from them at all when you got a problem. But other than probably they got a little ding on their budget or something. Other than that, they don't care. I don't think there's some that do, but it was cool because it was the first thing they've let out, and we had to really fight and come up with unique reasons. We were in a situation where I'm an engineer running software, so John Wilcoxon approached him and said, "If you can give me a pavement engineer with 15 years experience, then I can justify not hosting." But it was just taking up too much of my time, so we got through. They couldn't replace me basically, so that's the only way we got through it.
I've got a question for Aaron, and it's relative to Doug's statement about his DBA. How do you handle your ad hoc requests? Since you're handling the
For data,
yeah,
I do it.
you do it.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'll either get it through usually for us, our reports aren't strong enough really to handle a lot of the bigger requests. So, we'll open it up with SQL Developer or something like that and run our own queries.
So you've got access through the back end to
Yes.
support that.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I have read access to the database.
That was it.
That was a very good question. In fact, Dave, you did mention that when we are hosting, we are your IT. So that really plays into those ad hoc queries and those ad hoc data needs that you may have. So it is at the end of the day, the data is yours. So how you get access to it, it shouldn't really change with a deployment method, if you will. We have a question over on this side.
Over there? No. Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you have any restrictions, either through the hosted solution or the SaaS solution, with how many ad hoc requests you can make per year, or that kind of thing in regard to licensings and cost.
So, I don't know if you can hear me. So we don't have any set restrictions on number of queries. What we do have is like this performance SLA we like to meet, right? We want to make sure that you're not negatively impacted by a lot of report queries that may slow down your system because it's run on the same system. So if you have a need for a significant number of reports, we could look at that and set up a separate reporting server that would take the load off the main one. But that's all. We can solve those problems. We haven't historically needed to. That's not a very common thing. And we in IT are concerned about overall performance and stability. So proper isolation is important. And if you run a query, even we may grant access to run a query against a database, but there is risk there. So we ask, it's a partnership with regard to what you can do in that database. And there have been times when we have seen negative performance because of a query that was run. Sometimes it requires quick stand-up of the data, or not the database, but the application again if it hangs, that kind of thing. And we hope that people understand that, while we are trying to maintain a high SLA, service level availability with the system, if you are taking those chances by running potentially inefficient query or a very large query, you could potentially impact performance. But you're hurting yourself, so to speak, on that. So it's typically well understood and measured on the client side as well. So we don't limit it, no.
You can definitely crash it out with large reports. That
Yeah.
was a case that we had when we first went live. It's been addressed, but we ran into that immediately. Yeah.
And all our alarms go off and we stand it back up again as quickly as possible.
They flip the switch.
This is more a follow-on on terms of performance and demand. And I believe that there's when in the SaaS deployment level, let's say there's an agency that's going to roll some kind of training out. we can beef up very quickly the hardware capacity and then bring it back down as it settles. That's one of the things about SaaS. I mean, you talk about the experience with that, and then to the on-prem in particular, or hosting, like, how do you guys handle like peak demand in terms of hardware? Because I think that's one of the areas that Dave, I think, has looked at where he doesn't have to deal with that. And we've learned a lot over the past 12 months in that area. Maybe speak to that, Dave, a little bit. Dave Scassa?
So one of our clients, we have 3 different data centers. One of them is in Amazon's cloud infrastructure. And then we do use, the elasticity of the cloud, and we're continuing to evolve that. So we're getting much better at managing, cloud services overall. And in that environment, we're able to schedule and bring up additional training instances to hand load. I mean, we find that training is very heavy load on the system because you have everybody performing the same task in unison at the exact same time, and that will test any system's limits. So one of our clients here, we I think the last time we did it was just a week ago, brought up 8 additional application servers to handle the additional load for the training class. And even though the environments were specific to training, it was isolated. It's always isolated from production, but we were able to scale to meet that need. And we can do that too in our other data centers. It's just not quite as elastic. It's not immediate or easily schedulable. We can. We just don't have that set up just yet.
I mean, we have about 1,000 users, and they're all on at the exact same time. And that's what Ron was talking about. We did a lot of window testing, speed testing, and my initial instinct was, they set us up with a crappy server, but that wasn't the case. They basically informed me that there was nothing better that they could do in that area, and they ended up rewriting Windows and the software and improving the performance that way. Made it more efficient.
Yeah, we trained. I actually lost a lot of money. I bought a lot of cigarettes for people because I said smoke them because I know you have them at this point. We had to up our cores, up our RAM on the server. And you're right, training really did test the system, and it was an exercise in frustration. We did get beyond that. We over-allocated servers to the effort. And how we trained typically is how we trained was train the trainer, and then those guys went out and started training. Did that over 4 weeks. We had roughly 1,000 users. So by week 4, we really had the most people hitting that system at any given time because we had everyone out, everyone was training, and so we had maybe 80 people, 90 people, users on the same window at the same time, which was dramatic on performance. By week 4, we'd figured it out on premise, but the first 3 weeks were an exercise in frustration.
Yeah, I get that question a lot. Why do we need 32 gigs of RAM on the app server?
We'll see.
So the question 3 is actually what we have been discussing over the past few minutes. It really ties the discussion well together. A lot of the times that, as our panelists were discussing, we have, we see as the investment into the on-premise solutions, into hosting your own solution, and that kind of becomes a basis for deciding the next step. And how you reallocate your resources, how you manage that budget pool is completely up to you. When the IT team gets over on this side, that doesn't necessarily mean that your IT team goes away. They still have quite a bit of responsibilities, as David can probably allude to that. They still have quite a bit of responsibility, but it takes away their energy and focus from something that can be managed easily by us, and more into scaling your application, scaling your own business, and reaching out to more and more users and making it more accessible for the state and the users, if you will. I think we have a few more questions. Let us know if anyone from the crowd wants to engage in any of these. Data security has been one of the hot topics of the year, and we can say that when you are hosting your data, there's a sense of security, and versus when someone else is doing it for you. Doug, I'll start this discussion with you. Since you are hosting the data, has data security been a reason, or will that be a reason for any of your future decisions on a deployment method?
That's a good question, and it's one of those things that I wish I didn't know what I know now when I started this process. And one of the things that data security has bitten us, and I'm sure you'll smile, is the concept of proxies. I had no idea what a proxy was, and proxies have bitten us a number of times. They've slowed down. Nothing to do with AgileAssets at all. It's absolutely internal to the department. It's security, or basically a way of handshaking with the server, and it has caused us major problems in a whole bunch of different ways. So data security has kind of bitten us. The other thing in terms of data security, as far as I'm concerned, we don't have any personal identifying information in the system, or we're not supposed to. We actually do. Don't upload accident reports, lesson number 1. But we're not supposed to have any personal identifying information. So as far as I'm concerned with data security, it's my concern more is with data integrity. If someone were to get in and monkey with something, as far as I'm concerned, we could make it all public facing and they could see what we did, and I wouldn't care. And I don't think most people would. But really, data integrity is huge. And then some of the security that we as a state has put in place have caused us massive amounts of headaches.
David or Aaron, anything that you would mention from your experience around data security? Has that been any of your concern? David, I'll probably start with you here.
Yeah, we're always concerned about data security. I mean, it's what we do. I've got some great guys. They're very security minded. They lock everything down. I mean, we'll take a deployment that the FBI has done, that the CIA has done, and we'll lock it down even further. And I just scratch my head and ask why. It's GIS data. Why does it need to be more secure than the Pentagon? And we go through all this stuff, and we still find that we make mistakes. I mean, we're humans. We make mistakes. Just last week, we had a whole bunch of weird login attempts coming in through our domain servers, and it's like, where is this coming from? And we finally tracked it down. They had a port, 8080, port open, or any permission on a GIS server. So people were coming in from the outside world and hitting this GIS server. Wasn't doing anything, and they were using weird names that didn't have accounts, and they were getting rejected. But it just kind of goes back to, I've got limited resources. I've got a staff of, 60 to 70 people. Have a whole bunch of responsibilities, a bunch of systems we have to maintain. I can't do it all. I can't expect them to do it all. I deal with Microsoft quite a bit, and we've been moving some things out to Azure. And, they spend over $1 billion a year on security. I can't make things more secure than that. So, and part of the RFP process, that was some of the questions we asked in it, is about security and how the potential vendors handled security. And you gotta balance the reward with the risk. And honestly, like I said, payment data should be available to the public. I don't think they'd understand it. I don't understand it. But that is good information for people to have. There's other people out there in the world that want to be able to consume this data, and I want to be able to get it to them. I don't want to have to, kind of hoard that stuff and do all these ad hoc reports and get this stuff out. Let's, provide a service, and I think that's where the world's just going, is all these, services talking to each other, and no, not so much on premise anymore. We just got to find a way to let, AgileAssets talk to ESRI, which talks to our financial system, and keep all those things in sync and happy, and we'll all be good.
Thanks, Aaron.
Yeah. For me, I felt like our COT team was so worried about security that I didn't have to be. But they wouldn't allow any direct connections to Agile, so we had to create SFTP servers to move all the interface files, and then some of our payroll files had social security number, street address, basically everything you'd want to know about someone, and so we cleared all that out of the interface, so that doesn't move around. We weren't even using the data, so I don't know why we had it, but yeah, no, they were plenty worried for me, I guess.
Awesome. We do have some questions online.
You have to speak in the mic industry.
Okay. So I'll take the few questions from the Slido here. One of the questions is, what type of money, what pool of money, if you will, do you use for each of your deployment type? Is it all the same? Are some types of money easier to get than others? Who would want to take that first?
I can go fast because as far as I'm concerned, it all comes out of our FEO1 budget, which is our maintenance funds. That's how we pay for everything related to Agile. And again, John is our director. He's the one that signs the checks, so he's pretty easy to convince. If we tell him we need it, then we luck out and we get it.
Yeah, Montana's the same way. It's all state funded, and if we could figure out a way to have the feds pay for it, I would. But it's state funded.
Yeah, in Nevada, we're all state funded as well. I'm trying to shift the mentality of getting these types of things over to operating costs. That's another reason I wanted to go to the SaaS. This isn't a capital expenditure that has some value at the end of its life. It's what we need to do our jobs every day. So lease computers, do software as a service, and just really understand what our true operational costs are for technologies like this.
Awesome. One of the questions we have is, if you could start your current deployment method all over again, would you do anything different?
I think for Montana, I think the short answer would be no. The one thing I would like to probably look at is moving, as we move into a mature maintenance management system, is to look at SaaS or hosted. I like the fact that I've got a talented DBA who can make changes instantly for us and on the fly, but as that data, we loaded 500,000 data points into our system. As that data gets mature and we know it's correct, it would be nice to take the pressure off the DBA so she could do something else.
Okay. And I think, Aaron, you guys are just moving into, you just moved into the hosted world, so I believe this question may not be that applicable for you and David. But okay, thanks, Doug. There is a question, I think, Dave, this will be probably for you. Are test servers available for hosted SaaS instances? And I think the answer is yes.
Test servers. Yeah, so for each of the environments that we set up, we have a standard template that we follow. It's typically two environments, production and non-production, and within the non-production environment, we'll have three named instances. Typically, one of them is usually test, right? One's train, one's staging, but those names can change. They're interchangeable. The answer is yes.
And similar to that is, or along the same lines, can you integrate the DOT IT procedures into the rollouts or the processes? I believe sometimes there is the CAB boards, the CCB boards that you alluded to earlier.
The answer is yes. It depends on the interaction level. So with the three different models, we have the on-premise, right, obviously wouldn't involve us except for maybe trying to meet the release timelines that you're looking for, or providing hot fixes on scheduled timelines. For hosted and SaaS, for the hosted side, we'd certainly want to get any change approved, whether that's by agreement with your project manager and your project manager's agreement with the the cab or the CCB, whatever you have internally. We want to coordinate with that, so we do that on a regular basis already. For SaaS, it's a little bit more like a defined open change where we say, here's what our plan is for release, and we would get your agreement up front that this is when we plan to do the releases. And we also are improving our development processes, which was mentioned in the keynote this morning, where when we do release, it's toggle enabled, right? So we can enable or disable a function without impacting existing production. And we let that toggle be controlled by you guys. So yeah, we're fully capable of, or able to and willing to work with your cabs. I don't know that I want to sit on every cab on a weekly basis, but we can work with the project teams to make that happen. So
I think those are majority of the other key questions that we wanted to discuss. Any questions? Any other questions from this crowd? We have a question here.
So in Minnesota, we host on-premise, and I know my DBAs, and I know my app support people, and I can go to them. I know who's good, who I want to avoid, and that kind of thing. If I'm hosted or I'm SaaS, do I have certain DBAs, you know what I mean? Do I have certain technical people that I would deal with on a regular basis, or is it just sort of anonymous?
okay, so we are not a gigantic company, so we have our lead DBA that you would probably get to know. And then we have additional DBA resources that we pull in to provide background maintenance on things, the regular scheduled activities, resizing, volumes, adding additional space, and that kind of maintenance stuff. But if we run into a production issue, you're going to talk to Jeremy Lomas, he's here today. And if it's after hours, it might be Jeremy and Mustafa, or we have a couple of other people that know our systems very well that we have at the ready. But Jeremy is our primary DBA, and you would get to know him.
You can also have you can have a lot, and like we have if you have a DBA you like, you can get him access to the database and let him do the stuff he does.
But I'm sorry, there's also, client care. A lot of our client care reps are able to help a significant amount as well. It doesn't have to go directly to the DBA as a first step. They might know what the problem is before it has to go to a DBA, but I'm just throwing that out there as well. Okay.
So your response also made me wonder, we guarantee access to our system business hours. If it's hosted or SaaS, it almost sounds like you guarantee access 24/7, is that right?
Well, we guarantee SLA 24/7. It really depends on what is agreed upon with the sales team. But yeah, I mean, our shop by standard is a 24/7 shop. SLA agreements can vary by agreement, right?
And is there different costs depending on what availability I'd like to have?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's all negotiated in the SLA.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.